Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel, Kalanati. Today I'm going to review A Life Less Throwaway, The Lost Art of Buying for Life by Tara Button. This is a nonfiction book about mindful curation and buying products that will last you a lifetime. It's not the type of thing that I usually review here on my channel or that I spotlight, but I figured I might have enough to say about this one. I should actually do a separate review on it. So I read this book because I have been generally interested in things like sustainable living, zero waste living, the plastic-free movement, minimalism, tidying, organizing, the KonMari method, all of that stuff. I don't do any of those things a lot, but I find that they've all been very influential in my life and kind of adjusting my relationship with my physical possessions. And if you are interested in any of those specific things like zero waste living or sustainable living, you're probably going to come up with this question at some point, which is, okay, I do actually need to buy things. I do actually need some products and items and tools in my life. How do I buy the thing that isn't cheap, that isn't built to break in a couple of years, that isn't faddish, that will actually be classic and long-lasting and something that I can enjoy using? How do you buy for life? So that's why I really wanted to read this book. And it has some pros and cons. I don't think that the author really answers the question or teaches you how to buy for life, unfortunately, but I do think there are a couple of things she does in this book that are very helpful to know. So it's kind of organized into a 10-step plan where she teaches you each thing you need to know. And I felt like the first half of the book was the part that I got the most out of, that was the strongest overall. And that's the part of the book where Button explains the concepts of planned obsolescence, psychological obsolescence, and how advertising and marketing work to manipulate you psychologically, mentally, emotionally. And that was very interesting because Button is kind of an insider. She actually worked in advertising and she can tell you stories about what it's like from the other side, how intentionally advertising campaigns are designed to make you do a certain thing or to buy a certain thing. And while I'd kind of known about obsolescence and advertising before, I myself have done marketing in the past, I had to be reminded of some of this stuff, and I think Button really drove home to me how truly manipulative advertising is, how truly bizarre it is that most of the stuff that we buy today is actually planned to break. Just at that point where you won't be too upset about it, you'll just go buy another thing rather than complaining. It was enlightening reading, to say the least, and I had a little bit of an epiphany while I was reading that portion about how I have always thought that I was a very ad-resistant person, that I'm not affected by advertising or I don't pay attention to it very much, and so I don't have to worry about it. But while reading this, I realized I may be resistant to advertising in some big industries because they are so outside of or conflicting with my own lifestyle, the meat and dairy industry, for example, but I am not resistant to advertising in areas that I actually care about, which tend to be like my hobbies. I will buy things like books and yarn and craft things and gardening supplies because I actually care about those. And yes, I'm being led by the nose by ads in those areas. So that is what I really got the most out of from this book. It's just that whole discussion of where does this begin in the first place? How did we end up endlessly buying into this cycle of buy, break, buy, break? It all comes back to the manipulation, the obsolescence, the psychological tactics, the advertising, and the marketing. The second half of the book then gets more into the actual items themselves and buying things that you can repair or recognizing things that are actually going to be high quality, how to do research into things. And this is the part of the book that started to lose me. I didn't think it was nearly as strong, and partially because there's probably this bit of ironic conflict between what the book is saying, what the book is doing. Like the first half of the book is about becoming more resistant to ads and manipulation. And the second half of the book starts to feel like an ad for the author's website, which is called Buy Me Once, I think. There are many times where she's talking about buying things and is like, and you could just go to my website because we've done all the research for you and we can guarantee that these certain things are what you're looking for. And I'm like, okay, but that just makes this an ad, right? I haven't checked out the author's website. I actually plan on doing that because I think it might be a useful resource. But there was something about the second half of this book that started to really lose me. It may also be that more of the lists and resources and tips in the latter half of the book actually become more useful if you are in that moment trying to buy something. What if you're like researching which type of refrigerator you should buy? You could go through a lot of those steps and actually put that advice into practice right away. Whereas if you're just reading it in general for some ideas, you're gonna skim read it probably. It's not that super interesting and it's not applicable in the moment. So perhaps this book has more to teach than I'm giving it credit for. You just have to be using it at the right time for that to be apparent. One more thing I want to mention about this book is something I have faulted other similar books for, and that is its lack of explicit acknowledgement that there is an inherent privilege in this advice. What this book essentially is saying is buy expensive things once. Save up or use that large chunk of cash you have lying around to buy expensive things once, because expensive things are usually the more high quality ones. This is not advice that many people can follow. I mean, that just, people can't do that. And it's similar for advice in zero waste living, sustainable living, plastic-free living, all of that stuff. It usually comes down to what can you afford to buy and how much time do you have to do things, to make things, if you're not going to buy the cheap plastic mass-produced things. And there are many people in this world who do not have the time or the money to follow this advice. I think we need to have more of a discussion of that. I don't think that the privilege in this advice means the advice isn't good. I just think that there is a bigger picture here. Maybe what I wanted to say is, this is very awkwardly phrased, but essentially, if you have the means, if you have the time and the money to follow advice, to adjust your lifestyle, to do things like what this book is recommending, you should, because other people can't. If you can, do it because you're voting with your time and money for better economic practices, better manufacturing practices, and ultimately that could make things better for everyone worldwide. And that is a huge part of this discussion, huge part of why you should do this that's missing from a lot of books, in my opinion. But anyway, overall, this was an engaging read. I enjoyed it. I got a couple of good things out of it, even if I think that it wasn't as strong or as helpful as I wanted it to be. So that is it for my thoughts on A Life Less Throwaway by Tara Button. Definitely let me know if you have read this or similar books and what you thought of them. I am still looking for further things on this topic to read, so I welcome any suggestions. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and I'll be back again soon with another video, and until then, bye.